recorded and will be made available after this webinar. So a couple things just to start off with. We applied for the full amount of $350,000, and we were awarded that amount, leaving us with $328,704 to reward in scholarship funds. Funds must be exhausted by September 30th, 2023. So what that means is if you apply for funding, you will receive the amount you applied for by then. And the applications for scholarships are due March 1st. So with that intro, I'm going to get into where to find the application and where to find these details that we are going to discuss. If you want to just double check and make sure that you do that you are on mute, I'm going to hold all questions until the very end of the webinar. So this is our the Michigan Center for Rural Health's website. So you can find that website at www.mcrh.msu.edu. And we're on the homepage here. If you go into, there's a couple ways to get there, by the way. But if you go into programs and select EMS, you'll have some options. And to get to the grant application, you want to go under EMS grants and projects. Once you land on that page, the workforce grant is the first grant that pops up. And it's going to give you a breakdown of what this grant looks like and all of the criteria, which we're going to spend some time talking about today. I just want to really quickly scroll down to show you the resources that are here. The grant application guidance can be downloaded here. The workforce budget can be found here. These documents are also inside the application, so you really can't miss these. The FAQ will be uploaded soon. I did attach it to the intro email. So all of the frequently asked questions that I've compiled so far are there in the email you received today. And then if you scroll down, today's Q&A was posted below, and so was the registration. So let's talk a little bit about this grant. As I said, we did get awarded the full amount, and the deadline to apply is 11:59 p.m. on March 1st. And there are going to be two tracks. Track one is the scholarship track. You can be awarded up to $20,000 in student tuition to provide to the student for a paramedic, an initial paramedic education program of choice. EMS agencies and colleges both apply for this funding. We will not be providing any funding to a student. And one of the big things that's important in this application is the funding institution needs to fill out the application in collaboration with the student. The student cannot apply on their own behalf. The representative from the funding institution, which would either be an EMS agency or a college, needs to sign off on the application amongst some other things that we're going to see once we get inside. The reason for that is the funding is not going directly to the student. It is going to either an EMS agency to provide for the student or an initial paramedic education program to provide for the student. Track two, the scholarship track offers reimbursement at $15 an hour to a max of $16,000 per student. So this is for EMS agencies only. And if you think about that, it makes sense, right? You're going to do like an earn to learn type of situation. So this track is for EMS agencies only. When you fill out the budget request, you will be providing us with evidence of how many hours the student is going to be in the classroom. And then you're going to just do some simple math. So for example, if the student is in the classroom 500 hours, you're going to multiply 500 hours times $15 an hour to arrive at an amount. You cannot exceed $16,000 per student. And that hour allocation needs to align with your program schedule. So those are the two tracks. One of the big questions I'm getting is, if you are an EMS agency, can you apply for both tracks? The answer is yes, you can apply for both tracks. So how are we preferencing applications? Well, we are looking at, and this should come as no surprise, right? We're looking at rural Michigan census tracts. We want to provide paramedics in rural landscapes. So One of the things that is going to be our preference criteria, or I should call it a category, is being a provider that serves a rural census tract community. That's a key word here. It's not that you live in a rural community. It's not that your main station is in a rural community. It's that you serve a rural census tract community, okay? The other thing that's important to keep in mind is we are looking at whether you are a single parent. And the reason we're doing some of these others that you're going to see below that I'm going to talk about is we want to address some of the barriers and challenges that folks are facing when they want to do paramedic. They're an EMT and they want to do paramedic. And these are some of the barriers and challenges that we're addressing. Single parents will get a higher score on the application review. Women will get a higher score on the application review. 39% of paramedics nationwide are women. Racial and ethnic minorities will also get a higher score on the application review, and veterans will get a higher score on the application review. So you can imagine our scoring card is going to be looking a lot like what you're seeing here, with the addition of, did you complete the application? There will be some scoring for the essay that the student will be completing, and all of those variables will come together to give a final score. The applications will be scored by a scoring committee that we are putting together internally. So there will be multiple people looking at these applications, some of which have an EMS background, some of which don't, to create a fair scoring situation for all of the applications that come through. So a little bit about the logistics. You can find this all on this website page and I've been over some of these already. So the application has to be submitted by the institution receiving the funds on behalf of the scholar. The applicant must represent an initial paramedic education or a licensed Michigan EMS agency. The EMS agency and/or the college must be in the state of Michigan. The applicant understands to qualify for paramedic student hourly reimbursement, they must be an EMS agency employer. And there must be an agreement made between the funding institution, so I'll use an EMS agency as an example, and the student, agreeing that the student plans to serve as a paramedic in the state of Michigan for at least 2 years, okay? So this goes with, we want to create paramedics and we want to keep them within the pipeline for a good amount of time to ease this workforce shortage that we're experiencing. So there must be a drafted agreement between the EMS agency and the student that addresses this, among other things such as, should you fail out of the program? What's the consequence for that? Should you get into the program and you as the EMS agency fund the program and then the student decides it's not for them and just walks away, what's the agreement say about that? Is a student responsible to repay a percentage of the tuition? How are you going to recoup costs? And what is the expectation of the student you're funding? So we're going to get to this in the application a little later and take a deeper dive. But in the back of your mind, you should be thinking about, okay, I need to draw up an agreement between me and Sarah, who I'm planning to fund, and I need to outline the agency expectations for what they're going to be doing in the program, how they're, what the expectation is behind completion, not having disciplinary action, not having an excess of X amount of absences while in the course, leading to them being expelled. Those types of things need to be outlined for the student ahead of time. And then what their responsibility to the institution that's funding them is, should they not meet those expectations. We want the funding to land into the hands of the right students, and that's why this is part of this application. So I hope that's clear. If you have any questions, please hold them because there will be more detail as we go through. We'll save time at the end for questions. So we talked about adhering to terms. We had talked about the application must remain in good standing within the paramedic initial education program in order to continue and graduate. So that's an expectation that needs to be outlined. We also address the fact that these funds need to be exhausted by September 30th. So applications come in by the deadline, March 1st. We plan to review and then start providing awards by March 14th. And we plan to exhaust all funding by September 30th. One of the requirements that goes along with that September 30th deadline is if you have someone that's wanting to get this scholarship, they need to be enrolled in a program by then. So you need to furnish proof that they are enrolled. And we can talk more about that as we move through. The applicant institution agrees to report on the outcomes to the Michigan Center for Rural Health. So part of the grant RFP and the agreement we made when we were writing this grant is we want to see the outcomes. So for example, we will ask you to track all of the scholarship applicants within your program. We will want to know whether they complete their paramedic certification, whether they go to test at the National Registry site and or state approved, depending on the situation in the future, and whether or not they become licensed in the state. And then we may continue to ask, about employment. We want to know if this person that graduated the scholarship program gained employment, where they gained employment, and also how long did they stay employed with that EMS agency, emergency department, etc. So we will be asking for those outcomes as part of the grant reporting. And so as the education institution and or EMS agency, we will want to know those details. So to apply for the grant, you can click the apply button. And as you can see here, you can access the grant application guidance, the budget application, and the FAQ will be right there down below. So I'm going to segue now into the application. So give me just one moment. Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Let's try that one more time. Okay. So I'm in preview mode right now, just for the sake of not completing an application. But this will look exactly like this to you. Just ignore the cell phone off to the right-hand side there. So what's going to happen is you're going to get into the portal. So homepage, right? You click apply. This is where you're going to land. And at the beginning of this application, what you saw on the website is reiterated. So the 2 tracks are outlined, the criteria, the deadline, all of the goodies are on this page so you can review them before you get started. And the nice thing is before you move ahead, you can actually also download the grant application guidance. So if you click this, it will download right to your computer. You'll be able to open up the guidance. This is for folks that maybe want to walk through the guidance first, which I highly recommend. So if you download, well, you should download the grant guidance and start working through the questions. This will be really helpful when you're collaborating with the student to complete the application. So for example, if I were the EMS director and I were working with Sarah on her application, I know that I have to fill out this application on behalf of Sarah, but I also know that I need to work with Sarah on the application because there are questions that only Sarah can answer. So what I would do is download this grant application, work my way through it, and send Sarah an email, attach a copy of that. And whether you want to highlight or pull those questions for Sarah, you can do that. But send it to her asking for her information when it comes to those questions. One of the most, I would say, time-intensive questions on the grant application the student needs to complete is the essay. So you're going to want to give that to the student ahead of time and give them at least a couple days, if not a week, to work through the essay and get that back to you. And then what you will be doing is you'll want it in a format where you can copy and paste and input that data. Another way you can do it is you can wait until Sarah is on shift. She's provided the information. The two of you set up an appointment and you walk through the application with Sarah, inputting all of her information. Personally, if I were the EMS director, that's probably the way I would feel most comfortable doing it. That way the student can double check all the info as it's entered. They can see their essay being input and they've seen what you've inputted into the system. So if you can make that happen, I would do that. The other thing you could do too is with technology, right? You can set up a Zoom call and do the same thing. So doing this over Zoom, projecting the application and working through it with Sarah might be the best approach. So now we're ready to complete the application. Okay, so we're going to enter by hitting the arrow. And it's going to tell you all applicants must complete the application below. This application is competitive. Only completed scholarship applications will be considered. All scholarship award applications will be reviewed and scored by the MCRH review committee. So knowing that it's competitive, please be sure when you're completing the application that all of the fields are completed. I've set up most, if not all, fields to bounce back and scream at you if you don't put something in. Many of the fields won't even let you submit the application if it's not input or inputted. So for example, if you don't upload your budget, it will come back and say you must complete this field. It could be an upload error that happened, right? Maybe it just didn't upload, but it's going to tell you something to let you know that field is not completed. The only fields that are hard to verify, for example, if you misspell your first name or, I don't know, you put in the wrong phone number, the system's not going to know that, right? So just be very careful in what you're inputting. And another reason why being with the student when you complete the application is probably a good idea, so there are no errors. All right, so I'm ready to go. I got it. And this is how the questions are going to look. So it's going to ask you which tracker you're applying for, right? And I told you guys you can apply for both tracks. So this allows you to select both boxes. I'm going to apply for both tracks. I've read the criteria, okay? And I'm going to move to the next question. Now it says EMS workforce budget application, and there's another clickable link for the application. I can just click this link and download the application. I'm not going to open it because it'll make the screen look funky, but I can click on this and open the application and work through the application. Okay. So what I can do is I'll leave this down here and I will show you what the application looks like in just a moment once we get through the rest. But this is already outlined for you. It's already set up. You just need to plug and chug and do the math. But be prescriptive in your application. Be sure you provide all the details, number of hours, hourly wage, the tuition, why the tuition is that cost. I highly encourage letting us get back to you or maybe discuss, for example, if you ask for a tuition amount, we may ask for verification. Be prepared for that. So asking for the true amount that you know is going to be charged by either your institution or the college initial education program you're setting the student to. This is where this all happens. So it's going to let you upload the file. So all you do here is you click, and I do need to upload something, otherwise it's not going to let me move on. So I'm just going to pick a file and upload that. Easy peasy, okay. And then now that I have that file uploaded, I did choose a Word file. I believe it selects all different types of files, by the way, PDF, Word, JPEGs. You have lots of options in here. And I'm going to move to the next screen. Now, had I not uploaded that file and I tried to move to the next screen, it would highlight in red and say, please upload a file. So it's going to tell you that. Now, this is where you fill in your name and information. And I just wanted to scroll down really quickly to remember. Okay, so I'm going to really quickly enter information here. because otherwise I can't get you to the next screen. So what did I do in the first line that's incorrect because I was rushing? I did not put in my last name. Competitive, be very careful, okay? So first and last name, job title, we'll make up an address. So mailing address, city, state. By the way, these are also verified. If you misspell the state, you enter a zip code that doesn't align with the state, it's going to scream at you. Mailing address is not verified, and for good reason, because that could be a slippery slope. Email addresses also are verified. So if you get an email address, if you input your email address accidentally incorrectly, it will likely flag that when you go to submit, which is great. Same thing with phone numbers. These are verified as well. Probably shouldn't do that. Let's do this. All right, student scholarship recipient name. So we're using Sarah. So I'm going to enter her first name. Student scholarship recipient last name. Let's do, I don't know, Bowman. Just making this up. And then this is Sarah's categories that she qualifies for. So Sarah does currently serve a rural census tract. She actually is a single parent. She's a woman and she's a veteran. So you can see I can select all that apply there. Okay. And then student scholarship recipient mailing address. So this is Sarah's address. So we'll do ABC Street. With Lansing again. State. I really hate that that box is popping up, but I can't fix that now. All right, valid zip code, valid city, the two go together, and then Sarah's email. Got to do a real email. All right. So that will verify that email. A real phone number. Okay. The student scholarship recipient serves a rural Michigan census tract area as a first responder. Yes or no, right? And clearly this will align with what we just did up top. So that's verification for rural census tract. Please provide the Michigan County the student scholarship recipient applicant serves. I'm going to go with a good example of a rural census county, Dickinson County. And then please provide the name and address of the student scholarship recipient applicant's EMS employer. So this is where if we were to mail something to the EMS employer that Sarah works for, where would we mail it? Again, just a fictitious address. Oh, that's organization name. So we'll go with ABC Ambulance. Fictitious address. Real cities. State. Zip code. And then please select the current EMS license status of the student scholarship recipient and provide the applicant's Michigan license number for verification. So a couple things I want to highlight here. The first is, as many of you already know, you need to be a licensed EMT basic in order to work as a licensed paramedic. The only exception to this rule is if you are almost graduated from your EMT course, right, and you're about to test, and this scholarship you know you want, you can apply for it, highlighting that you will be graduating. So for example, let's say I'm an MFR, I could select MFR and I could input my license number there, right? Most applicants will be licensed EMTs, and we will want that application or that license number from you for verification. Obviously, if you're an EMT advanced, I put intermediate specialist here, but I feel like that may have been phased out. And then other. So this could be a lot of different in-betweens that you can explain. And there's a reason there's a text box there, right? So choose wisely here. Let's say I'm an EMTA, I'm going to roll with this right now. And then, you know, I put in a valid license number that I've made up. It's really important because this is a competitive application. There will be a scoring box for this specifically around whether you're licensed or not, and also completeness will come into the score, right? So if you forget to enter Sarah's license number, you could be docked a point. Okay, so be sure you enter her license number so we can then utilize that to verify. So that's what I've done here. Sarah's an EMT advanced. I've got her license number in there. And then please provide the student scholarship recipient applicants years of service as an active EMT basic. So as many of us know as industry experts, it's great if someone's been working as an EMT basic for a while. They've gained that practical life experience, the skill set, and the competency. So this also could be advantageous. And there will be some scoring around this as well, where we'll be looking at, hey, you know, Sarah has 5 years of experience versus John, who hasn't started working as an EMT basic yet, or maybe isn't even licensed yet. And we'll look at that when we look at the competitive side of the application. So Sarah's been doing this for 5 years, and we're going to input that there. And then please provide the name and address of the initial paramedic program the student scholarship plans to attend. Let's say, you know, Sarah is attending your own. So we're going to say ABC Ambulance Education Center. Address, city, state, zip. Again, this will scream at you if something's not right when it comes to city, state, and zip code. Please provide the chosen initial paramedic education program director contact information. So this is going to be the key person we're going to be contacting for outcome metrics and also student progress, right? So let's say that Bob, I'm making up names here, Rue is the paramedic instructor. So that's his first, oh, not reading the directions. Got to be careful here. Bob Rue, program director, last name. We might get stuck. I'm running out of valid email addresses. Let's try this one. And phone. So we want Bob's phone. All right. Please provide the start date of the initial education program the student scholarship recipient applicant plans to attend. So again, this goes into the funds need to be exhausted by September 30th. Let's say the student is going to start, I'm just making this up, August 31st, 2023. Okay. And then it says, please upload the filing institution's written signed agreement. So this is the piece of the puzzle that's not provided by MCRH. And the reason this template is not provided is everybody's going to have their own expectations around what the application agreement is going to be between you and the student. So drawing up just a quick agreement, if you're already an initial paramedic education program, you likely already have this document. If you don't have this document, it's relatively simple to design. And if you're really curious about, you know, maybe not reinventing the wheel, you can reach out to one of your contacts at an education institution, and they will likely share their template with you to use. So, you know, this is an agreement that says, you know, if you don't complete the program, you owe ABC Education Center X amount of dollars or % of tuition, and then some expectations. You're expected to arrive on time. You're expected to stay within the guidelines of absences and tardies. You know, you're expected to complete all clinical third rides, all of those things. And then it's signed by both you and the student. The student is aware of those expectations. You've done all of this, and now you're going to upload the document. And that is the end of this page. Thanks. Let's see if this lets me go. Cool. That means I entered everything correctly. Now, had I my finger slipped and I entered an incorrect zip code or an invalid phone number, it would have actually taken me right back up to the top. There would be some red writing that says, please fill in the fields below. And then you would have to go through and see which field was incorrectly entered and corrected. So the paramedic initial education scholarship application, this scholarship application is limited to 3,500 characters, not words. I'm going to repeat that one more time. It's limited to a maximum of 3,500 characters. I believe that breaks down to like 500 to 600 words. So what will happen is have the student design their response to this question, give them that character limit, give them the grant guidance application, really, that's or the grant guidance, it's going to tell them there, and let them stay within the confines of that. I also set a minimum of like 25 words. That way, if you don't fill it out, it will alarm at you and say you need to fill this out. Or I'm sorry, 25 characters, not words. Qualtrics doesn't allow me to set words, by the way. So 25 characters. So make sure you upload this. Be careful with formatting, check it out before you enter your final draft. I'm just going to write, make sure, because I need to get to 25 characters, the application. Make sure you complete the application completely. Okay. And it's giving you your word count here. So if you copy and paste, it'll do the same thing. All right. So we can move on. And then this is your agreement. So by signing below, you agree to adhere to the EMS workforce grant scholarship requirements and attest that all information provided is accurate, truthful, and the student scholarship recipient applicant is aware of this application being filed on their behalf. So what you're going to do is just quickly sign. Okay. And that's you as the filing institution, not the student. Okay. Just the filing institution signs. I've already received one applicant that actually filled it out as a student and signed it as a student. And if they don't submit a proper application, they will be disqualified. The student cannot sign. It needs to be the filing institution. Okay. So I'm going to submit that as Sarah's EMS director. And then what you can do, so a couple pointers here is when you're ready to submit the application, we built in a box so it didn't just submit. And it says, are you ready to submit your application? Clicking the forward arrow will submit your application. This is your last chance to go back and look at what you've done. And I've set this up so you can use the back button. So it will actually take you back. Okay. So just keep in mind, like the signature, you're going to have to re-sign again. But if you go back again, it will actually keep the text. You won't have to start over. I guess I should sign so I can actually submit this. Okay. And there's a clear button there too, if you don't like your signature. And then I'm ready to submit. And here's the blanket email that basically says, thank you for submitting. This is verification you submitted. I also have an email trigger set up. So when you submit, it will email you and say you've submitted your application. And that's the end of the application. So I hope that gives you a better idea of what this application looks like and the requirements within it. There's just a couple quick things I want to walk through with you really quickly. This is what the guidance looks like when you download it. This is on our website and at the beginning of the application. I highly recommend using this first before you go in the portal. So walk through it, look at the criteria, send it to the student that you're applying for on behalf of the student. It outlines the requirements and it also outlines each question for you. So you can look at the questions, you can write your responses, you can gather addresses and phone numbers and all of that good stuff, okay? So as you can see, all the questions are here. Tells you exactly what you're going to need to do. And then the last thing I wanted to show you, which let me just see if okay. I want to just show you a copy of the budget really quickly. So let's go back. I'm going to download that budget. There we go. So when you go into the portal, the budget will be downloadable. It's also downloadable on our website. It's a very simple doc. It looks like, it did look like that. Here we go. Okay, so it looks like this, and you're basically going to outline your tuition costs, your fees, books and uniforms. We will consider funding those books and uniforms, but we need you to break down the cost of each. So description. So for example, 37th edition emergency care by Caroline, total $1,100. Also, you want to put how many, one book, right? Make sure you enter how many of things if you're buying a uniform, if you're buying books. If they need a copy of the Platinum Planner or whatever it is, any kind of technology to go with the book for learning and testing, put the number, one of Platinum Planner XYZ, total cost. Hourly reimbursement, break it down for us and show us how many hours and then the hourly rate. Other, if there's something unusual you're going to ask for, be sure you explain why you're asking for it. You can also shoot me a quick email if you like, and I can maybe guide you depending on what it is. And you're going to fill out your applicant mailing address. This would be where we would mail the scholarship funding. So you want to provide that. This is your total funding request. Pretty easy application, easy to fill out. So that is available to you already. And let me just make sure I haven't forgotten. One thing I do want to highlight here too, which what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to the FAQ. This is what we're using for rural county designation. So I will add this to our FAQ, our frequently asked questions, and you can see which counties are designated as rural in blue, which are designated as non-rural in gray, and which are designated as counties with rural census tracts. So that means the entire county is not designated rural, but there are portions. This will be a good reference guide. Now, don't get, one of the big questions I've been flagging is, can I apply for this scholarship if my student is not serving in a rural census tract? Or what if they're serving in a county that only has a portion of a rural census tract? Can you apply? Yes, apply. Because we don't know how many applicants we're going to get. We don't know where they're going to be when it comes to the categories. We may only get 10 rural applicants, and we may have more funding to exhaust. We want to create a pipeline of paramedics in the state. And as we're learning, it doesn't necessarily matter if we create more rural or urban or suburban paramedics, because we're all impacting each other. So even though our category preference is rural, we may choose to fund someone in a partially rural, a suburban urban landscape. It's another paramedic that can serve our state and ease the burden, because what we've learned over the last couple of years is we're all impacting each other. So I encourage everybody to submit an application knowing that preference will be given to rural, but you are not disqualified from applying. So with that, I'm ready for Q&A. You're welcome. Does the funding go directly to the filing institution or the student? Filing institutions only, Heather. Funding only goes to filing institutions. Again, the application must be completed by the filing institution and signed by the filing institution. Other questions? We don't have any. I'm going to start running through the FAQ doc as well, because there's some good ones on there. Do you have any template? I do not. I do not, but I guarantee, and I might even be able to connect you with someone that has one. Many of the EMS education institutions will have a template, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind sharing. Okay. If we have a student who's already enrolled in a program, at what point do we start the budget amounts? Retroactive or an effective date? If the student is currently enrolled in a paramedic program, you can ask for all funding that was utilized to fund that student. If the student has graduated from the paramedic program, they are not qualified for the funding. You're welcome. Can the $15 an hour be applied to FICA or other withholdings? So if an agency applies for $15 an hour, can they pay the students? No. No. Send me this in an email and let me double check, Ben. But I'm 99% sure the answer to that is no. Thanks. So as these questions are coming in, I'm going to run through this really quickly for you guys. Here are a couple questions that have come my way that you haven't asked yet. Does a student need to be a U.S. citizen to qualify? Absolutely, yes. You cannot work as a paramedic without having U.S. citizenship. Does the EMS agency, we've talked about this. I'm going to skip some of these because we've already talked about them. All agencies can apply. I graduated from paramedic school 3 years ago and I'm still paying on my student loans. Do I qualify for track 1? No. So only currently enrolled or those enrolled in an initial paramedic education program by September 30th, 2023 qualify for track 1. We talked about that. We talked about number 7. How many scholarship awards will be given? So as we saw with this grant, we will probably face similar complexities. So we anticipated giving up to 20 scholarships, but it depends, right? So if one person asks for 7,000 and the other person asks for 21,000, it's really going to depend on the applications we get, and then also the amount of funding we have and how we can spread that out. So it's really hard for me to say I have 20 scholarships because we truly don't until we see the asks for funding. So if you have one student that needs funding versus 5, I'm encouraging everybody just to put in the 5 applicants. And if we need to go through and sort through them, we will. But I would say there's not like a specific amount of applicants that we're looking at. We're looking to take every penny we have and help a student get through paramedic program with it. And that's our mission. Any other questions? Silence. Okay. Well, that is all I have for you guys. I am going to stop record.